I didn't even want to go to the wedding at first. That's the funny part. If my friend Dylan hadn't begged me to come because one of his groomsmen dropped out last minute, I probably would have spent that weekend on my couch in sweatpants eating takeout and pretending I enjoyed being alone. Instead, I ended up standing in a vineyard 3 hours outside the city, sweating through a dress shirt, while watching rich people drink champagne like water. And then I saw Jace again. My first crush. The guy who completely ruined me when I was 16. I swear my brain stopped working the second I recognized him. He was standing near the bar under those hanging string lights, laughing at something one of the bridesmaids said. Taller than I remembered. Broader shoulders. Dark hair pushed back like he'd just run his fingers through it. His sleeves rolled up to his forearms. Still unfairly hot. Still carrying himself with that effortless confidence that used to make my stomach twist back in high school. For a second, I honestly thought maybe I was imagining him. Because there was no way the universe would randomly throw my teenage obsession back into my life at my friend's wedding. But then Dylan walked up beside me, grinning like an idiot. "Oh good, you already found Jace," he said. My heart nearly stopped. "You know him?" I asked, trying way too hard to sound casual. "Yeah, man. He's one of Claire's cousins." Of course he was. Because apparently God enjoys comedy. Dylan looked between us. "Wait, you guys know each other already?" Jace turned toward me fully then, and the second his eyes landed on mine, I felt 16 all over again. That same stupid nervousness. That same awareness of every little thing about him. His mouth curved slowly into a smile. "Austin," he said. Just hearing my name in his voice after all these years did something to me I really wasn't prepared for. "Hey," I managed. Dylan blinked. "Hold on. How do you two know each other?" Jace grabbed his beer and smirked at me before answering. "High school." That was technically true. What he didn't say was that he'd been my best friend's older brother's teammate. What he didn't say was that I spent almost 2 years secretly in love with him, while pretending I only came to basketball games to support friends. What he definitely didn't say was that he once held my hand for 3 seconds during a haunted house and I thought about it for an entire year afterward. Dylan laughed. Small world. Yeah. Tiny, apparently. The problem was Jace looked even better now than he did back then. At 16, he'd been that athletic golden boy type everyone liked automatically. Tan skin. Confident smile. The kind of guy teachers adored and parents trusted immediately. Now he looked grown. And somehow more dangerous because of it. There was light stubble along his jaw. His dress shirt stretched across his chest when he crossed his arms. His voice had deepened too, rougher than I remembered. I hated how fast my body noticed all of it. "You disappeared after graduation," Jace said casually. I shrugged. "College. Work. Life. Yeah? Yeah." His eyes stayed on me a second too long. And maybe I imagined it, but the look felt different somehow. More intentional. Before either of us could say anything else, Dylan got dragged away by his new wife's family, leaving me alone with Jace for the first time in nearly 8 years. Neither of us spoke immediately. The wedding music drifted through the vineyard while people laughed around us, but suddenly I could only focus on him standing there beside me. Jace took a sip of his drink. "You still nervous around me, Austin?" I almost choked. "What?" That smirk got wider. "You used to get awkward every time I talked to you." Heat rushed straight into my face. "Oh my God! You did. I was 16. And now?" His tone was lighter than the words themselves. But something about the way he looked at me made my chest tighten. I forced out a laugh. Now I hide it better. That got an actual laugh out of him. And Jesus Christ, I forgot how attractive his laugh was. I looked away toward the dance floor, trying to get myself together. This was ridiculous. I was 26 years old, not some closeted teenager crushing on an older guy from school. But seeing him again brought all of it back instantly. Especially because Jace had never known. At least, I didn't think he did. Back then, I'd been terrified anyone would figure me out. Especially around him. So I'd buried it under sarcasm and avoidance, and pretending I didn't care whenever he was around. Meanwhile, internally, I was dying every time he touched my shoulder or smiled at me. And apparently my body still remembered all of it. You seeing anyone? Jace asked suddenly. I blinked at him. The question caught me off guard enough that I answered honestly. No. His eyes flicked down my face slowly before meeting mine again. Really? Something about the way he said it made my stomach flip. What's that supposed to mean? He shrugged lightly. Just figured somebody would have locked you down by now. That definitely felt like flirting. Right. Or maybe I was insane. Probably insane. I grabbed a champagne glass off a passing tray mostly because I needed something to do with my hands. What about you? I asked. Jace leaned one shoulder against the bar. Single. I nodded once, trying to ignore how relieved that made me feel. Which was stupid. Completely stupid. Because this was Jace. Straight Jace. My first heartbreak Jace. The guy I spent years trying to get over. Except then he said something that nearly made me drop my drink. You know, he said casually, I used to think you hated me. I frowned. What? In high school. I didn't hate you. You avoided me constantly. Because I wanted to climb him like a tree. But obviously I couldn't say that. So instead I muttered, I was awkward. Jace stared at me for a moment before smiling slightly. Yeah, he said quietly. I noticed. And the way he said it. It didn't feel mocking. It felt like he remembered me too well. The reception got louder as the night went on. People were drunk by the time dinner ended. Bridesmaids kicked off their heels. Somebody's uncle was aggressively requesting early 2000s club music from the DJ. Meanwhile, I was trying very hard not to stare at Jace across the room every 5 seconds. Which became impossible once he loosened his tie. I hate that detail specifically stuck in my head. But it did. There was just something about seeing him more relaxed now compared to the polished version everyone saw during the ceremony. Sleeves rolled higher. Hair slightly messy. Top buttons undone. And every time I looked up, he was already looking at me. Like he kept catching himself doing it too. At one point Dylan's wife dragged me onto the dance floor with a group of people, and I figured that would finally distract me. It didn't. Because halfway through some terrible throwback song, Jace walked over holding 2 drinks. One for you, he said. I accepted it carefully. Trying to get me drunk? You were more fun nervous. I laughed despite myself. You're enjoying this way too much. Maybe. That answer sat weirdly low in my stomach. The music shifted into something slower then, couples immediately pairing off around us. I stepped back automatically. Nope. Absolutely not. Jace raised an eyebrow. What? I already know where this goes. Slow dancing with my high school crush is exactly how I end up embarrassing myself. The words slipped out before I could stop them. The second I realized what I said, my entire body went hot. Jace stared at me. You had a crush on me? Jesus Christ. I rubbed a hand over my face immediately. Okay, cool. Awesome. I'm gonna go jump into the vineyard now. But before I could escape, Jace grabbed my wrist lightly. Not enough to force me to stay. Just enough to stop me. Austin. I looked back at him reluctantly. And he was smiling. Not laughing. Not smug. Something softer. You really had a crush on me? I groaned. Please let me die with some dignity. That's a yes then. You're enjoying this way too much. Maybe I am. I tried pulling my wrist away, but he didn't let go immediately. And suddenly I became painfully aware of his hand around me. The warmth of his fingers. How close he was standing now. You want to know something funny? He asked quietly. I narrowed my eyes. Depends. I had the biggest crush on you too. My brain genuinely stopped. What? Jace finally released my wrist, but only because his hand slid down briefly against mine first. Like he noticed it too. You heard me. No, I said immediately. No, you didn't. He laughed softly. I did. You dated cheerleaders. And you were painfully straight. Jace tilted his head slightly. Did I ever actually say that? I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Because honestly? No. He never had. Everyone just assumed. Including me. Jace stepped a little closer, lowering his voice under the music. You want to know why I kept trying to talk to you back then? I swallowed hard. Why? Because every time I walked into a room, you looked at me like you wanted to either fight me or kiss me. I nearly inhaled my own drink. Oh my God! I couldn't figure out which one. That is humiliating. It was cute. Cute. That word alone almost killed me. I stared at him for a second, trying to process the fact that my first crush apparently liked me back this entire time. It felt fake. Like some weird fantasy your brain invents after too much alcohol. You're serious? I asked quietly. Jace nodded once. Completely. Then why didn't anything happen? Something flickered across his face then. A little regret maybe. You were 16, he said. And terrified. That was true. I figured if I pushed too hard you'd disappear. I looked down at my drink. Because honestly, I probably would have. Back then I was still figuring myself out. Still scared of anyone noticing. Especially someone like him. Jace exhaled quietly beside me. I used to wait for you after games sometimes, he admitted. I looked up. What? You always left fast when I came over to talk to your friends. He smiled faintly. I thought maybe if we accidentally walked to the parking lot together, I could get you to stop avoiding me. My chest physically hurt hearing that. Because I remembered those moments. I remembered rushing away before he could talk to me because I was scared my feelings were too obvious. And apparently he noticed every single time. That's actually depressing, I muttered. Jace laughed softly again. Little bit. For a second neither of us moved. The music blurred around us while people danced nearby, but suddenly it felt weirdly private standing there with him. Like the rest of the wedding disappeared. Then his eyes dropped briefly to my mouth. It happened fast. But I noticed. And judging by the way his expression shifted afterward, he realized I noticed too. My pulse started pounding. You know, he said slowly. You still do that. What? Get nervous and look away when things feel too real. I swallowed hard immediately because he was absolutely right. Jace stepped closer again. Close enough now that I could smell his cologne mixed with champagne. Austin. The way he said my name this time felt completely different. Lower. Warmer. Dangerous in a way I wasn't ready for. I looked up at him carefully. And for one insane second, I genuinely thought he was about to kiss me right there in the middle of the dance floor. But then somebody shouted his name from across the reception. The moment shattered instantly. Jace leaned back with a quiet curse under his breath while one of his cousins waved him over for pictures. He looked annoyed about it too, which weirdly made me feel better. I gotta go do family obligations apparently, he said. I nodded, trying to act normal even though my heart was still racing. Right. But before he walked away, he leaned down slightly toward my ear. So we're not done talking tonight, he murmured. Then he disappeared into the crowd before I could even respond. And I stood there frozen like an idiot holding 2 drinks I no longer remembered getting. I tried avoiding him after that. Not because I wanted to. Because I absolutely did. That was the problem. My brain just couldn't process what had happened without short-circuiting every few minutes. Jace liked me back. Teenage me would have passed out hearing that sentence. Adult me honestly wasn't handling it much better. So after he got dragged into family photos, I escaped toward the outdoor patio behind the reception hall where it was quieter. Cooler too. The night air felt good against my face after hours inside surrounded by dancing and alcohol, and whatever emotional crisis I was currently experiencing. I leaned against the railing overlooking the vineyard and tried to calm down. Didn't work. Because all I could think about was the way he looked at me when he admitted it. The way his voice dropped when he got close. The fact he almost kissed me. Austin. I closed my eyes immediately. Of course. I turned around slowly, and there he was again. Jace had ditched the tie completely now. Shirt sleeves rolled up higher. A little flushed from drinking and dancing. He looked unfairly good standing there under the patio lights. You followed me, I said. You ran away. I needed a second. That bad? You just casually informed me my entire teenage experience was built on mutual pining. That made him laugh. Mutual pining? Yes. Very tragic. Very repressed. Jace stepped beside me against the railing. I didn't know you were repressed. I gave him a look. I was 16 and closeted. Fair. For a second we just stood there quietly. Inside, the bass from the music vibrated faintly through the walls while laughter spilled out every time someone opened the doors. Out here felt different though. More private. Jace rested his forearms on the railing beside mine. You know what I remember most about you? He asked suddenly. I glanced over carefully. This should be interesting. You never let anyone touch you. That caught me off guard. What? In high school? He looked out over the vineyard while he spoke. Your friends would shove each other around or hug or mess around like guys do, and you always pulled away immediately. I stared at him. Because he was right. I used to panic anytime anyone got too physically close to me back then. I was terrified somebody would somehow figure me out from the smallest thing. I remember thinking you looked nervous every time I got near you, Jace admitted quietly. I laughed awkwardly. Well, yeah? Look at you. He looked over finally. What's that supposed to mean? You were like. I gestured vaguely at him. You. That explains nothing. You were hot. His mouth twitched immediately. And terrifying. Terrifying? You were captain of the basketball team. That doesn't make me scary. You wore tank tops constantly. Jace laughed loud enough this time that I felt heat rush into my face again. Oh my God, he said. You were down horrendous. I need you to stop talking immediately. But he kept grinning. You know what's killing me? He asked. What? You genuinely thought I had no idea. I blinked at him. You knew? Austin. He looked at me like I was insane. You literally stopped making eye contact any time I wore sleeveless shirts. I covered my face with one hand instantly. This is the worst night of my life. No, Jace said softly. I think it might actually be a pretty good one. The way he said it made me lower my hand slowly. His expression had changed again. Less teasing now. More serious. The air suddenly felt heavier between us. I wanted to kiss you so many times back then, he admitted quietly. That sentence hit me straight in the chest. I swallowed hard. Jace, I'm serious. His eyes stayed locked on mine now, steady and intense in a way that made it impossible to look away. After games. At parties. Every time you got nervous around me. He shook his head slightly. You have no idea how hard it was pretending I didn't notice. I genuinely didn't know what to say. Because hearing your first crush confess something like that years later? It messes with your head. Especially when some part of you never fully got over them. I thought about you for a long time after high school, Jace admitted. That one hurt even worse somehow. You did? Yeah. I looked down at my hands. Because suddenly this didn't feel light or playful anymore. It felt real. And dangerous. You want to know something pathetic? I asked quietly. Jace smiled faintly. Always. I compared every guy I dated to you for 4 years. His expression changed instantly. The teasing disappeared completely. Austin. I know. It's embarrassing. No, he said softly. It's not. I looked up again. And this time, when our eyes met, there was something almost overwhelming in the way he looked at me. Like he wanted to say more. Like he was holding himself back from something. Then his hand brushed against mine on the railing. Barely there. But intentional. I felt it immediately. So did he. Neither of us moved away. The music from inside faded behind the pounding in my chest. Jace looked down at our hands briefly before looking back at me. You still nervous around me now? He asked quietly. I laughed once under my breath. Honestly? Yeah. A little. His thumb shifted lightly against my fingers then. And that tiny movement nearly destroyed me. Because it was gentle. Careful. Like he remembered exactly who I used to be. Austin, he said softly. The way he said my name that time. God. I looked up instinctively. And suddenly he was closer. Close enough that I could feel the warmth coming off him. Close enough that if either of us moved even slightly. The patio door slammed open behind us. We jumped apart immediately. A drunk bridesmaid stumbled outside laughing into her phone before freezing when she saw us standing there. Oh my God! She slurred. Are you guys having a moment? Jace dragged a hand down his face. No. Yes, she said immediately. You totally are. I started laughing despite myself while she pointed dramatically between us. I knew it, she announced proudly before wandering back inside. The second the door closed again, silence fell between us. Then Jace looked at me. And smiled slowly. Well, he said. Guess we weren't exactly subtle. And honestly, for the first time in my life around him, I didn't really care anymore. After that, it became impossible to pretend nothing was happening between us. Not that Jace seemed interested in pretending anymore. The second we walked back into the reception, his hand landed briefly on my lower back, guiding me through the crowd, and I almost lost my mind over how natural it felt. Like he'd always touched me that way. Like he wanted to. I could still feel the warmth of his palm even after he let go. You okay? He murmured near my ear. I looked over at him. You're making this very difficult. His mouth twitched. Good. God, he was dangerous now that I knew he liked me. Because suddenly every look meant something. Every touch felt intentional. And Jace touched a lot once he stopped holding himself back. My arm when he laughed. My shoulder when he squeezed past me. My waist briefly while we stood at the bar. Tiny things. Tiny, completely devastating things. At one point Dylan stumbled over, already drunk enough to barely stand straight. You two are being weird, he announced immediately. I nearly inhaled my drink. Jace looked completely calm beside me. Weird how? Dylan squinted suspiciously. Suspiciously close. Oh my God! I muttered. I'm serious, Dylan insisted. You guys keep staring at each other. Jace took a sip of his beer without looking away from me. Maybe Austin's just pretty. I choked instantly. Dylan yelled loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I knew it. Several people turned toward us while my entire body caught fire. Please shut up, I groaned. But Dylan just pointed aggressively at Jace. You like him? Jace smiled lazily. Little bit. I actually wanted the floor to swallow me whole. Because hearing Jace say things like that out loud after years of assuming none of this was possible? It genuinely scrambled my brain. Dylan looked between us in complete disbelief. Wait, hold on. Has this always been a thing? Neither of us answered immediately. Which apparently told him everything. Oh my God! He said again, quieter this time. This is years of unresolved tension. Dylan. No, I'm obsessed with this now. He grabbed my shoulders dramatically. Austin used to talk about you constantly. I froze. Jace turned toward me slowly. Really? I wanted to die. He was like weirdly emotional anytime you showed up somewhere. Dylan continued happily. Okay. I interrupted immediately. That's enough. But Jace was grinning now. Austin had a crush. I hate everyone here. You wrote poetry once, Dylan added. I stared at him in horror. You promised never to mention that again. Jace looked genuinely delighted. You wrote poetry about me? No. Dylan nodded aggressively. He absolutely did. It was one poem. Oh my God! Jace laughed. I covered my face while both of them laughed at me. This was humiliation on a spiritual level. But honestly, seeing Jace smile like that because of me made it weirdly hard to care. Eventually Dylan got dragged away again, thankfully before he could expose anything else from my deeply embarrassing teenage years. The second he disappeared, I pointed at Jace. You're enjoying this too much. You wrote poetry. I was 16 and mentally ill. Jace laughed again, shaking his head. I cannot believe you liked me that much. I looked away immediately. Yeah, well, Austin. His voice softened enough that I looked back automatically. And the expression on his face this time made my chest tighten again. Not teasing. Not playful. Just warm. You have no idea what that does to me, he admitted quietly. The noise of the reception faded weirdly around us again. I swallowed hard. Because suddenly the flirting didn't feel harmless anymore. It felt dangerously close to becoming something real. Then the DJ announced the last dance. Everyone started gathering near the dance floor while couples pulled each other closer under the lights. I moved automatically toward the edge of the crowd. Jace followed. You still avoiding dancing with me? He asked. Yes. Why? Because I already know I'll embarrass myself. He stepped closer slowly. You know what I think? What? I think you're scared. I laughed nervously. Obviously. Not of embarrassing yourself. My pulse picked up instantly. Jace held my gaze for a second before speaking again. I think you're scared this actually means something. That hit way too accurately. Because honestly, he was right. Seeing him again already cracked open feelings I thought were buried years ago. And now he was standing in front of me looking at me like I mattered to him too. That was terrifying. I don't know what this is, I admitted quietly. Jace nodded once like he understood immediately. Neither do I. That honesty somehow made it worse. Or better. I couldn't tell anymore. The lights dimmed lower as slow music filled the room. Around us, couples started swaying together while the vineyard glowed softly through the windows behind them. Jace looked down at me for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. Come here. My heart absolutely slammed against my ribs. Jace. One dance. I stared at his hand. 16-year-old me would have sold organs for this moment. And honestly, current me wasn't doing much better. Slowly, I placed my hand in his. The second our fingers locked together, his expression changed slightly. Softer again. Almost relieved. Then he pulled me gently toward him. One hand settled carefully at my waist while mine rested awkwardly against his shoulder. And Jesus Christ. Being this close to him felt unfair. I could feel the warmth of his body through his shirt. Smell his cologne. Feel his thumb moving lightly against my side in slow circles. You're tense, he murmured. You're my first crush. That doesn't answer the question. It absolutely does. Jace laughed softly under his breath. Then the song slowed even more. And somehow we moved closer naturally. Like either of us wanted the space anymore. I looked up at him carefully. Big mistake. Because he was already staring down at me. And the look in his eyes this time? That wasn't nostalgia anymore. That was want. Real, unmistakable want. My breath caught immediately. Jace's hand tightened slightly at my waist. Austin, he said quietly. I barely managed. Yeah? His eyes flicked down to my mouth again. And this time neither of us looked away. I don't remember how the song ended. That sounds dramatic, but it's true. 1 second we were slow dancing in the middle of the reception surrounded by people, and the next I was completely distracted by the way Jace was looking at me. Like he couldn't decide whether to kiss me or keep staring. Honestly, I wasn't sure which one I wanted more. The music faded out slowly around us, couples clapping as the DJ thanked everyone for coming. Neither of us moved right away. Jace's hand was still resting against my waist, mine still on his shoulder. And somehow standing there after the song ended felt even more intimate than the dance itself. "You okay?" he asked softly. I laughed under my breath. "No, actually." That got a quiet smile out of him. "Yeah," he murmured. "Same." People started moving around us again, grabbing jackets and drinks and saying goodbyes, but I barely noticed any of it. Because Jace still hadn't stepped away. "Austin," he said after a second. The tone of his voice made my stomach tighten immediately. "Yeah? You want to get out of here for a bit?" My pulse jumped. "You mean like leave?" "Just for a walk." His eyes stayed locked on mine. "Unless you don't want to." I absolutely wanted to. So 15 minutes later, we slipped away from the reception, while everyone else was distracted with sparklers outside the venue. The vineyard stretched quietly under the night sky, rows of vines glowing silver in the moonlight, while distant music drifted from the building behind us. It felt weirdly romantic, which normally would have made me panic. But with Jace beside me, it just felt easy. We walked slowly along the gravel path between the vines, shoulders brushing occasionally. Neither of us spoke at first. Not awkwardly. Just taking it in. Then Jace glanced over at me. "You know what's crazy?" "What?" "If somebody told me at 18 that I'd run into you years later at a wedding and immediately still want you." My heart stumbled. He smiled faintly. "I would have believed them honestly." I looked down, trying unsuccessfully to hide how much that affected me. "You say things way too casually. I'm trying not to freak you out. You're doing a terrible job." That made him laugh softly. We reached a small clearing near the edge of the vineyard where string lights hung from nearby trees. Somebody had set up benches and lanterns there earlier for guests. Now it was empty. Quiet. Jace sat first, leaning back against the wooden bench before glancing up at me. "You gonna stand there looking nervous all night?" "I'm thinking." "Dangerous." I rolled my eyes but sat beside him anyway. Close enough that our knees touched immediately. Neither of us moved away. For a second we just sat there listening to the distant wedding music and the soft sound of wine through the vines. Then Jace spoke quietly. "You really wrote poetry about me?" I groaned instantly. "Oh my God!" "I need details." "There are no details." "There are absolutely details." "It was terrible." "How terrible?" I covered my face with one hand. "Like, painfully emotional." "That sounds adorable." "It was not adorable." Jace smiled at me for a second before his expression softened again. "You know what I remember writing about you?" I blinked. "You wrote about me too?" "Not poetry," he admitted. "Mostly songs." That caught me completely off guard. "You're kidding." He shook his head lightly. "I used to play guitar after practice sometimes." He looked down at his hands briefly. "There were a couple songs that were definitely about you." I stared at him. Because suddenly my entire teenage life felt rewritten. All those years thinking I imagined everything. Thinking none of it could possibly be real. And meanwhile apparently Jace had been carrying this too. "You have no idea how weird this feels," I admitted quietly. "Good weird or bad weird?" "Overwhelming weird." He nodded slightly like he understood. Then after a pause he said softly, "I wanted to kiss you earlier." My chest tightened instantly. "When?" "During the dance." His eyes flicked down toward my mouth again. "And on the patio." I swallowed hard. "Jace. But I didn't want to push you." That sentence alone nearly wrecked me. Because that was exactly what made this feel different. He wasn't rushing me. Wasn't turning this into some fantasy moment. He was paying attention. Careful with me. Like he understood exactly how much power he had over my nervous system. "You're really trying to make 16-year-old me explode," I muttered. Jace laughed quietly. "I think 16-year-old you would be happy right now." He was probably right. Actually, no. Teenage me would have fully passed out by now. The silence settled again for a moment. Not uncomfortable. Just heavy. Charged. Then Jace shifted slightly closer beside me. Austin. I looked over. And immediately forgot how breathing worked. Because he was close now. Really close. Close enough that all I could focus on was his eyes and the slight part in his lips and the warmth coming off him in the cool night air. You still nervous? He asked softly. I nodded once before I could stop myself. His smile turned gentler somehow. Cute. That word needs to stop happening. Why? Because every time you say it I lose brain function. He laughed quietly at that. Then his hand lifted slowly toward my face. Not fast. Not sudden. Like he was giving me time to stop him if I wanted. But I didn't. God, I really didn't. His fingers brushed lightly along my jaw, thumb resting near my cheek. The touch was so soft it almost hurt. And suddenly I understood exactly why I never got over him. Jace looked at me for one long second. Then quietly asked, Can I kiss you? Every thought in my head disappeared instantly. I barely managed a breathless. Yeah. And the second he kissed me, every unresolved feeling I'd carried for years came crashing back all at once. I had imagined kissing Jace before. A lot, actually. Back when I was 16, it was the kind of fantasy that kept me awake at night afterward feeling equal parts excited and guilty. I used to think if he ever kissed me, I'd probably panic immediately. Turns out adult me wasn't much different. Because the second his mouth touched mine, my brain completely shut down. It was soft at first. Careful. Like he was still giving me a chance to pull away. But then I kissed him back, and something in him shifted instantly. His hand slid fully against my jaw while he leaned closer, kissing me deeper this time, and I swear my entire body lit up. Years. I had wanted this for years. And somehow it was even better than I imagined. Jace kissed like he thought about this too. Like this wasn't random for him either. The realization made my chest ache. I felt his thumb brush lightly against my cheek while our mouths moved slowly together under the string lights, and honestly, I forgot where we were for a second. Forgot about the wedding. Forgot about literally everything except him. When we finally pulled apart, both of us stayed close enough that our noses still brushed. I was breathing embarrassingly hard. Jace looked equally wrecked. Wow, he murmured quietly. I laughed breathlessly. Yeah. His forehead rested lightly against mine for a second while both of us tried to recover. Then he smiled suddenly. What? You kissed me back way faster than I expected. I shoved his shoulder lightly. Shut up. I'm serious. I thought you'd panic first. I did panic. There. I laughed again, but honestly my hands were still shaking a little. Jace noticed too. His eyes dropped briefly before he reached down carefully and intertwined our fingers. The simple intimacy of it almost got me worse than the kiss itself. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded. Then immediately admitted. No, actually. That made him grin. You're cute when you're overwhelmed. There's that word again. Because you are. I looked away automatically, and he laughed quietly like he caught me doing it again. You still do that, he said. What? Hide when you get flustered. I groaned. Can you stop knowing me so well already? Apparently not. The night air felt cooler now against my skin, especially after kissing him. But Jace's hand wrapped around mine grounded me immediately. It felt weirdly natural sitting there together. Like we skipped past awkward somehow. Or maybe all the awkwardness already happened years ago. You know what's messing with me? I admitted after a minute. What? If this happened back then. I shook my head slightly. I think it would have changed my entire life. Jace got quieter beside me. I know. I looked over at him carefully. His expression had softened again. Not playful now. Almost sad. I spent a long time wishing I'd just said something to you, he admitted. That hit me harder than I expected. You did? Yeah. He leaned back slightly against the bench. Especially after graduation. He laughed once under his breath. You disappeared so fast. I thought that was the safest option. From me? I nodded honestly. Being around you hurt. The words came out quieter than I intended. Jace stared at me for a second. Then his hand tightened gently around mine. I'm sorry. That almost undid me completely. Because he sounded genuine. Like he hated the idea that he'd hurt me without meaning to. You don't have to apologize, I said softly. You didn't do anything wrong. Still. We sat quietly for another moment. Then Jace asked, So what happened after high school? I smiled faintly. That's a very broad question. You know what I mean. And honestly, I did. He wanted to know about the years between then and now. The years where we became strangers. So I told him. About college. About finally coming out at 19 after spending my entire first semester pretending I was straight. About terrible dates and bad relationships and learning how to stop hating myself all the time. Jace listened to all of it carefully. Really listened. And every now and then he'd ask little questions that somehow made me talk even more. What about you? I asked eventually. He exhaled slowly. Honestly? He looked down briefly. I didn't fully figure myself out until a few years ago. That surprised me. Really? Yeah. He gave a small shrug. I knew I liked guys too, but growing up where we did. He shook his head. It was easier pretending I didn't. I understood that immediately. Too well. There were girls, he admitted. But it never felt completely right. I glanced at him carefully. And guys? His eyes met mine again. There was never anybody I wanted the way I wanted you. That sentence landed directly in my chest. God. Jace really needed to stop saying things like that before I emotionally collapsed. You can't just say insane things casually, I muttered. He smiled softly. I'm making up for lost time. The wedding music in the distance had gotten quieter now. People were probably leaving. Neither of us moved. Honestly, I didn't want to. Then Jace's thumb brushed slowly over my knuckles again before he asked quietly. You want to know something else? What? The second I saw you tonight. His eyes moved slowly across my face. I knew I was screwed. My stomach flipped immediately. Why? Because you still look at me the exact same way. I swallowed hard. And how's that? His gaze dropped briefly to my mouth again. Like you want me. The honesty of it made heat rush straight through me. Because he was right. Even now. Especially now. And judging by the way Jace looked at me afterward. He wanted me too. At some point, we realized the wedding had basically ended without us. The music stopped completely. The lights around the venue started dimming one by one. And still neither of us moved from that bench. I don't think either of us wanted the night to end. Jace leaned back slightly, still holding my hand while he looked out across the vineyard. You know what's funny? He said quietly. What? I thought seeing you again would feel nostalgic. I smiled faintly. And? His eyes slid back to mine slowly. It doesn't. The way he said it sent a slow warmth through my chest. Because I knew exactly what he meant. This didn't feel like revisiting some old crush anymore. It felt immediate. Real. Like something unfinished finally catching up to us. Jace looked down at our joined hands briefly before speaking again. I keep thinking about how close we got back then without anything actually happening. I laughed softly. Yeah. You remember graduation night? I blinked. What about it? His mouth twitched slightly. You disappeared before the after party. Oh my God! What? I skipped it because I heard you might be there. That surprised him visibly. Seriously? I nodded, embarrassed already. I had this whole stupid crush meltdown that week. Jace laughed under his breath. Austin. I was trying to survive emotionally. No, because that's actually insane. You have no idea how bad it was. He was still smiling when he looked at me again, but there was something gentler underneath it now. You know I looked for you that night? That caught me off guard immediately. What? At the party. He shrugged slightly. You weren't there. I stared at him quietly. Because somehow every conversation tonight uncovered another mischance. Another almost. You really like me that much? I asked softly. Jace didn't even hesitate. Yeah. The honesty in his voice made my chest ache all over again. For a second we just looked at each other in the soft glow of the string lights. Then his gaze drifted slowly across my face. You're thinking too hard again. I laughed quietly. You notice everything. Only with you. That one almost took me out. Jace shifted closer beside me then, his shoulder pressing fully against mine now. And honestly, the physical closeness felt so natural already that it scared me a little. Like my body recognized him immediately. Like some part of me had been waiting years for this exact moment. You cold? He asked suddenly. A little. Without saying anything else, Jace slipped off his suit jacket and draped it around my shoulders before I could protest. It still carried his warmth. And his cologne. Which honestly made the entire thing way more dangerous emotionally than it should have been. You didn't have to do that, I murmured. I wanted to. God. I looked down, smiling helplessly into the fabric for a second before glancing back up at him. You're very different from how I imagined you'd be. Jace tilted his head slightly. Different good or different bad? Good. His expression softened. How'd you imagine me? I laughed once. Honestly? I figured you grew up into some emotionally unavailable finance guy. He looked deeply offended. That's horrible. You wore polos constantly. I was an athlete. Exactly. Jace shook his head laughing while I smiled at him. And suddenly it hit me again just how easy this felt. Not forced. Not awkward. Just easy. Like we'd slipped into something we should have done years ago. Then his eyes caught mine again. And the air shifted immediately. That same tension from earlier returned so fast it made my stomach tighten. Jace's voice lowered slightly. You know what I've been trying not to think about? I already knew I was in trouble. What? The fact I finally kissed you. Heat rushed straight through me again. Oh. Yeah. His eyes dropped briefly to my mouth before lifting again. And now I kinda don't wanna stop. My pulse absolutely spiked. The honesty of it hit hard because I felt the exact same way. Jace leaned toward me slightly then. Slow enough that I could stop him. But instead of pulling away, I moved closer too. And the second our mouths met again, it felt even less careful this time. Less hesitant. His hand slid into my hair gently while mine grabbed instinctively at his shirt, and suddenly the kiss deepened hard enough to steal the breath from my lungs. I could feel years of tension in the way he kissed me now. All the restraint gone. Not rushed. Just intense. Like he'd wanted this for a very long time. A quiet sound escaped me before I could stop it, and Jace pulled back just enough to look at me. The expression on his face nearly ruined me completely. You have no idea what you do to me, he murmured. I honestly couldn't think straight anymore. Especially not when he looked at me like that. Especially not when his thumb brushed softly along my neck afterward. Austin. The way he said my name made my stomach flip again. Yeah? He smiled faintly. You're still shaking. I laughed breathlessly. This is a lot for me. I know. But he didn't let go. If anything, he pulled me closer against him. And for the first time all night, I stopped overthinking long enough to just let myself feel it. His arms around me. The warmth of his body against mine. The fact that my first crush was real and solid and holding me like he didn't want the night to end either. I rested my forehead lightly against his shoulder, laughing quietly under my breath. What? Jace murmured. This is gonna mess me up for a while. His arms tightened around me slightly. Good, he said softly. Because I'm not planning on disappearing again. We stayed out there way too long. Long enough that the wedding staff started stacking chairs inside the venue. Long enough that the night air turned cold. Long enough that Jace's jacket stopped smelling like fresh cologne and started smelling familiar. Like him. Eventually he glanced toward the venue and sighed softly. I think they're literally closing. I smiled against his shoulder. Probably. Neither of us moved. Jace looked down at me after a second, smiling faintly. You know what's crazy? What? If I hadn't come tonight, we probably never would have seen each other again. That thought hit harder than I expected. Because he was right. We'd spent years orbiting completely separate lives. And somehow one random wedding changed everything. I almost didn't come, I admitted. Jace blinked. Seriously? Dylan guilt-tripped me into it. He laughed quietly. That's horrifying. You owe Dylan your firstborn now. Fair. I smiled, but something emotional tightened quietly in my chest afterward. Because now that the night was ending, reality started creeping back in. This wasn't some suspended little moment anymore. Tomorrow existed. Distance existed. Real life existed. And apparently Jace noticed the shift in my face immediately. What? He asked softly. I hesitated. Then admitted the truth. I think I'm scared this turns into another almost. His expression changed instantly. The teasing disappeared completely. Austin. I mean, I looked down at my hands. We had all this history already. And tonight feels amazing, but you think we'll wake up tomorrow and it'll disappear? I nodded once. Jace was quiet for a second. Then he reached up gently, tilting my face back toward him. No, he said simply. The certainty in his voice made my chest tighten. You can't know that. I do. How? His thumb brushed lightly along my jaw again. Because I'm 30 minutes away from asking you if you want to go on an actual date. I stared at him. You are? Yeah. That nervous warmth spread through me all over again. Like a real one? Jace smiled slowly. Crazy concept, I know. I laughed softly before looking away again, smiling helplessly into his jacket. And honestly, that tiny moment right there felt even bigger than the kissing somehow. Because this wasn't just unresolved attraction anymore. He wanted something real. With me. You're very calm about this, I murmured. Oh, I'm internally losing my mind, he admitted immediately. I'm just hiding it better. That made me laugh harder. Good, I said. Because I've been having a crisis for like 4 straight hours. I noticed. He leaned closer then, forehead resting lightly against mine again. And this time the closeness felt softer. Not just charged. Comfortable too. I really did think about you for years, he admitted quietly. I swallowed hard. Me too. Jace smiled faintly at that. Then he kissed me again. Slow this time. Warm and lingering and careful in a completely different way than before. Not desperate. Not rushed. Just real. When we pulled apart, I stayed close enough that our noses still brushed. You know what 16-year-old me would say right now? I asked quietly. What? He'd probably throw up. Jace laughed against my mouth. Yeah, he murmured. Mine too. Eventually we finally stood and started walking back toward the parking lot together. His hand kept brushing mine the entire way until finally he just grabbed it outright. Like he was done pretending not to want to touch me. And honestly, I liked that way too much. The parking lot was mostly empty now, scattered with leftover flower petals and half-drunk guests calling Ubers. We stopped beside my car reluctantly. Neither of us looked ready to leave. Jace shoved his hands into his pockets before glancing at me carefully. So, you free next weekend? My stomach flipped instantly. I think I could be convinced. He smiled slowly. Good. Then after a pause. I should probably warn you about something though. What? When I like someone, I get kinda intense. I laughed softly. Jace, you admitted to writing songs about me. Fair point. And I wrote poetry. That's true. He grinned. We're both insane. For a second we just stood there smiling at each other like idiots. And suddenly I realized something. All those years, I thought my first crush was something unfinished. Something embarrassing I never fully got over. But standing there with Jace under parking lot lights after an accidental reunion at a wedding, it didn't feel unfinished anymore. It felt like timing finally catching up with us. Jace stepped closer one last time before I got in my car. His hand settled lightly against my waist again. You know, he said quietly, you still look at me the same way. I smiled faintly. Yeah? Yeah. How's that? His eyes dropped briefly to my mouth before meeting mine again. Like I'm still your first crush. I laughed softly under my breath. Because honestly, he was. Just not only that anymore. So I leaned up and kissed him first this time. And judging by the way Jace immediately pulled me closer and smiled into it, I had a feeling this was only the beginning.